if you add up the countries that are allied with Ukraine and helping them fight off this illegal invasion from Russia, we outweigh the Russian economy by 25 to 1. We've just got to make our economic strength and our partnership with Ukraine count. And while I know that, some people say that recently there's something of a stalemate and all the rest of it, but if you look on the Black Sea, actually, the Ukrainians have very effectively fought back the Russian Navy, sunk about 20% of Putin's Black Sea fleet, opened up a corridor in the Black Sea through which they can export grain. Hundreds of ships have now sailed from Ukrainian ports around the world, and the Ukrainian economy is growing and its exports are growing, and that is all to the good. So I don't accept the narrative that Ukraine can't prevail in this fight. What we've got to do is do everything we can to help make sure they do. Thanks very much. And I can absolutely confirm I came back because Rishi Sunak asked me to, and I'm a great respecter of him. And also, I do believe in public service. I think if you think you can make a difference and make a contribution, you should try. And I joke that I had an apprenticeship as Foreign Secretary by being Prime Minister for 6 years, but I'm not entirely joking because, of course, you do a lot of diplomacy as Prime Minister and you have to do a lot more as Foreign Secretary. And right now, the needs are very great. So it's good to be back and good to be working as part of this team.
Is it hard to play second fiddle?
No, not at all, actually, because, he's a very clear boss. He's easy to work for because he knows what he wants. He chairs cabinet meetings with great efficiency. He's read everything, understood everything. He knows what the issues that are sort of contentious that we have to discuss are about. And he has a pretty clear view of what he wants. So that's a good boss. I'm sure your editor's just like that. It's a good boss.
Thinking that.
Almost exactly the same. Now, look, you're not here in Davos to talk about Rishi Sunak, though. You're here to call for greater action to tackle the world's biggest challenges. And just overnight, we've seen these retaliatory strikes by Pakistan against Iran. We spoke to a correspondent in Pakistan earlier. And very clearly, extremely heightened tensions there with that strike overnight, leaving several people dead. How concerned are you by what's happening there?
I am concerned, and I've spoken to and met with the Iranian foreign minister to make my concerns clear. There's not only the attack on Pakistan, but also the attack on Erbil in Kurdistan, where it was a dual British, Kurdish and Iraqi British national was killed. So these are indefensible and wrong, and we should make that clear. Look, we're living in a very dangerous, uncertain, and unstable world, and so what Britain is trying to do is make sure we strengthen our alliances. We work closely with our friends. We work with great friends like the Gulf countries in the Middle East to try and restore and, where we can, bring about greater stability, greater certainty. But it's difficult at the moment. But if you take each individual situation, whether it's helping Ukraine fight off Putin's invasion, whether it's trying to bring stability to the Middle East, whether it's trying to deal with conflict in the rest of the world, Britain is active on the global stage with I think an effective team and an effective policy. And that's what we've got.
Did you get a sense from the Iranian foreign minister who you met here in Davos as to why they would be seemingly setting little fires everywhere?
Not entirely. I obviously wanted to deliver a very clear message about what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea and the fact that these attacks on international shipping are illegal and unacceptable. They're damaging to world trade. They fly in the face of freedom of navigation. That was the principal message, but obviously I did challenge him about these other issues as well, and said that the world is watching Iran and its influence over these proxies, but also the action it has been taking directly. And that people will draw the conclusions from the actions that they are taking, and they should expect a very strong response. So that's what the foreign ministers, have to have these conversations. It's important to keep these channels open, even if you profoundly disagree with someone. And that's why I think it's right to have these meetings, but you have to be very clear when you do.
And elsewhere, of course, the war in Ukraine. What are your thoughts on what's happening there and what more Britain can do? You've described it as a war that we have to support and win.
Well, the first thing I did this morning was go to a meeting of a whole series of foreign and defense ministers from across Europe, particularly sort of Eastern Europe, the neighbors of Ukraine. And they were all speaking with great passion and clarity about how important it is that we stay the course. And I couldn't agree more. if you add up the countries that are allied with Ukraine and helping them fight off this illegal invasion from Russia, we outweigh the Russian economy by 25 to 1. We've just got to make our economic strength and our partnership with Ukraine count. And while I know that, some people say that recently there's something of a stalemate and all the rest of it, but if you look on the Black Sea, actually, the Ukrainians have very effectively fought back the Russian Navy, sunk about 20% of Putin's Black Sea fleet, opened up a corridor in the Black Sea through which they can export grain. Hundreds of ships have now sailed from Ukrainian ports around the world, and the Ukrainian economy is growing and its exports are growing, and that is all to the good. So I don't accept the narrative that Ukraine can't prevail in this fight. What we've got to do is do everything we can to help make sure they do, and we have to be prepared for the long term.
We keep talking about this fractured, dangerous world that we're in at the moment. I wonder, how high you feel the stakes are, and also, having famously left government as a result of the Brexit referendum, how much muscle you feel Britain has on the world stage, and how much we've lost with not being part of Europe.
No, I think Ukraine actually demonstrates that Britain can be, when it comes to the EU, not a member, but a friend, a neighbor, and a partner. And if you look at Ukraine, we've actually done really more than any other European country in terms of our support, whether that's diplomatic, military, financial, and crucially, the training we've given to the Ukrainian armed forces. We've now trained over 50,000 Ukrainian soldiers. So I think actually that part, obviously, I have very strong views, and my side lost the referendum, and I accepted the result. But I can see from my new position that our partnership with the European Union is working well. In terms of the power and influence we got in the rest of the world, we shouldn't overstate our position. But we, are one of the sixth biggest economy. We've got some of the most capable armed forces. We've got a massive diplomatic network. Our intelligence services, some of which I visited last week, are respected quite rightly all over the world. I would say we are small enough to be nimble, but we're big enough to really matter. And so we should make that influence felt. So whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in Africa, whether it's our enormous, still big, £12.5 billion aid budget, we can actually make our presence felt and crucially make a difference in these situations to enhance our own security and our own prosperity, because ultimately that's what our policy is about.
Tory infighting has unfortunately, I think it's fair to say, been a theme since Brexit, and we've seen it in full play over the last 10 days or so with the Rwanda bill, much longer than that actually. I wonder about your feeling on that, because if you look at the importance of the Rwanda bill against the backdrop of all of the huge conflicts that we're talking about and the escalating tensions, do divided parties win elections? And is that something that we should be focusing in on at a time when the world is in a situation where we're creating a whole new wave of migrants, because of situations unresolved elsewhere?
I would take a step back from it all and say this, that look, all over the world, there are problems with illegal migration. And I'd say you've got some countries that are prepared to take sometimes quite unorthodox, but nonetheless sort of novel and effective ways of dealing it. And there are those that aren't dealing with it. And I want us to be one of the countries that does deal with it, not least because wide-scale illegal immigration is incredibly disruptive and destructive to your politics and to faith in your system. So I think it is important. I'm glad that the bill passed the House of Commons last night. And I think it is part of the measures that we're taking. And, when you compare us to the EU, actually, the small boat crossings are down by over a third to the UK over the last year because of the action we've taken, whereas others in Europe are still suffering from an increase. So I think it is an important thing. It's not the only thing we're doing. We've got a plan for the economy. We've got a plan to improve health service, our education, all those other things. But actually dealing with this issue, I can see all over the world, countries that fail to deal with it suffer a huge disruption to their politics in a thoroughly bad way.
In your memoir, you wrote that Donald Trump won the nomination to be the Republican presidential candidate in 2016 because of his protectionist, xenophobic, misogynistic interventions. I wondered how much you're looking forward to him potentially heading back to the White House.
Well, obviously, I still recommend my book. I'm sure it's available at all good bookstores, probably for a much reduced price. But look, actually, what I would say is one of the things that has driven this sort of growth of populism, not just in America, but around the world, is this issue of illegal immigration and the issue of the immigration across the southern border in the United States. And so I always say to people, there's no point complaining about populism. You've got to deal with its causes. One of the causes is the fact that, while globalization is a good thing and lots of countries and people have benefited, some people have and some places have been left behind. We've got to deal with that. Another big cause of populism is the sense that countries haven't had enough control over immigration and that immigration policies haven't been designed to benefit the specific country. If we can deal with that cause, then we might be able to take some of this angst out of our politics.
Just finally, Nadine Dorris, playing Mystic Meg, I think at the moment, is of the mind that you're the next in line to be the Conservative Party leader once again. What does she know that we don't?
Well, she's always been a much better novelist than political forecaster. So I think I'll leave it at that.